There
Amy
you go.
Tan, you are the founder of Workplace Initiative, and your URL is wpinitiative.com. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So tell me what Workplace Initiative does.
So we're a corporate coaching, executive coaching, and leadership company. Basically, we provide executive coaching, coaching for emerging leaders, groups, teams, and leadership development training.
How, I know you were in the corporate world for a long time.
Yes.
Tell us about that, and then how you're like me. I mean, I transitioned. I left that 22-year trial career to become a peacemaker, so I get the transition stuff.
Yeah, I bet you do.
I'm here curious about your story.
Yeah. So I guess I kind of grew up to sort of go into corporate. I guess it was, in my day, we didn't really know what that even meant. Like if it wasn't lawyer, doctor, sort of those professions that were very obvious, anything like around business was unclear. But I knew that's probably what I was going to do because I didn't want to do the other things. So go to college. I got very interested in the entertainment industry, media industry. That's where I started. It just kept evolving like careers, right? Years, not a straight path for most of us, but lots of twists and turns. I went and I got my MBA in London, and that sort of began my real deep corporate career in marketing. I worked in the UK for a while. Then I moved to California and spent 11 years with the same company. And it was a really interesting roller coaster of an experience that was a mix, as the roller coaster, right? Highs and lows. And the high points were, just being able to do some really amazing projects and being fulfilled by the work I was doing because it was expansive and because I was learning and because I was helping develop people on my team, and all of that was great. But then it had some real low points that were very much to do with culture and leadership. And I was laid off in 2015 in one of those typical corporate stories where new leadership came in, new CEO came in, kind of knocked everybody off one by one on the senior leadership team. I was somewhere in the middle of the picking off, and that just began a whole world of what's next for me. I was not young at this point. I was experienced, and I felt very wise in a lot of ways, but yet was not finding my fit anywhere back in corporate. And the longer kind of that path to finding somewhere took, the less I wanted to go into it. So as I was kind of going through this period, I did a lot of self-discovery work and meditation and all sorts of different things I'd never done before, and really took time diving into myself and what I wanted. And that led me to discover coaching. And in a really selfish way, one of the things that really appealed to me was that I could go train as a coach. And in training, I'd get to keep doing all the stuff I was doing in terms of understanding myself better and all this, expansive work around my own self. So I was like, wow, I get to actually learn and really enjoy the process, which I've been doing ever since. And then, after training and it's become, as much as I sort of was resisting corporate, it also became really obvious that that's exactly where I belonged. Coaching in a coaching people who went through or are going through a lot of the challenges that I went through in my career.
Wow.
Long story.
When did you start coaching?
2000, and I trained in 2017, started really with my business 2018.
Okay. And you're based in Southern California?
Yeah.
Huh. So what is it now? You've been a coach for what now, 5 years? What is it that you enjoy about your work the most?
Oh my gosh. I would say that the single biggest moment of enjoyment comes when I feel like somebody's just discovered something they didn't realize before. And it's usually a new perspective or some sort. Breakthrough can sound very grand. So it might not be like a massive thing, but it's a shift. It begins to change everything. And I think because that's what I discovered for myself, I mean, it's all about changing perspectives and being open to, a new way of thinking about things. When clients do that, when I see them do that, where they've been stuck and all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's another way. That's just amazing. It's so exciting.
So you get really excited when you see the transformations occur.
Yeah.
What's your
Oh,
boat?
it's completely. I mean, I love this work so much. I could never have imagined being in a career that would be so fulfilling, that I would enjoy every minute of it.
Oh. So,
Yeah.
there are a million people out there that are coaches. It's
Yeah.
kind of a saturated marketplace, I guess. Low barriers.
I resisted for a while.
What makes you unique and special that sets you out and differentiates you from all the other wannabes out there?
My trite answer is that I'm me and nobody else is me, right? And I truly believe that when it comes to coaching, clicking with people is the most. You're not going to get anywhere if there isn't that chemistry. That so that me factor, it matters. But I think also, my background helps. What I'm trying to, and this is kind of what I say in on my website and my business, is make work better for people. I've had too many Mondays where I'd wake up in the morning and be like, it's a defeating feeling, right? Sunday nights were like the worst, and Friday nights, right? Because it was like, yes. I don't feel that way anymore. I am excited for Monday morning, and I know that that's possible. And so for me, working with people, whether it's the teams, the individuals, helping other people get to that place where they're excited on Monday mornings because they've made choices that lead them there. That's, I mean, I don't know if that's a differentiator, but that's kind of my why, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think, the energy I bring to the work, it's all wrapped up in the same thing.
Yeah, you're pretty high energy. So let's think about a young woman coming out of college today. What advice would you give her? You've got daughters. You've got a daughter in college. So what advice do you give your daughters about what to do with their lives now that they've gotten most of their education out of the way?
Oh God. Well, it's funny because when you talk about my daughter, I'm like, what advice can she give me? Because honestly, and I'm kind of joking, but at the same time, I recently had an epiphany. For years, I've been saying when people would ask the question, like, who's had the most influence on you in your life? I would say my mother, although I know, I talk about my father in a recent interview that we did, but I talk about my mother. She's really, she's an amazing woman. But I kind of realized that at a certain point, my daughter started having more influence on me, my eldest daughter in particular, because she's got it all together. So advice for her, I don't know. But in general, I would say, really valuing yourself. I think for young women in particular, not selling yourself short, knowing, like, really diving into knowing who you are. And I gotta say, this generation, Gen Z, they have that in spades, I think, which is perhaps why my daughter can teach me a thing or two. But I really believe that sticking with who you are is, that's the beginning, right?
It's a lifelong journey.
It is a lifelong journey for
I mean,
sure.
Huh.
But showing up as, sorry,
Oh,
showing up as yourself will make you so much happier
I agree.
than trying to be someone you're not.
That's right. And it took me a lot of years to learn that lesson. And it took it really did take a long time. I don't think I really started feeling that until I had left the practice of law. So I was no longer identifying as a trial lawyer and becoming a peacemaker and starting to really find out who I really was. And that's hard. When you're a kid, a young person, a young adult, that's hard.
I think it is. And it changes over time. As you said, it's a lifelong journey, right? So who you are changes constantly, gratefully, because that's a good thing because we grow. But I think it's embracing it. Like I think about it in leadership terms, right? That how do you discover who you are as a leader, right? That's something that I talk to, especially the emerging leaders, who are trying to figure it out. And, being authentic as a leader, and what does that mean? And I've written on that topic because I think it's so important. When I was coming up, it was about role modeling. And I think there's value in role modeling if you're role modeling the right person who resonates with you, who fits with like who you are. But I was in an environment where the people who were successful were not the kind of people I was, right? And so, as a young person, do you think, well, to be successful, I need to be like that? And I think that sometimes happens. And I know, and that affects the culture of an organization, right? Because everybody is modeling this behavior. And
so your comment about authenticity really struck me. I would imagine that in your coaching practice, you are part of what you try to do is help people become more authentic if that's something they see as being valuable. How do you help them develop that? I think I know what authenticity is. Maybe we should talk about that. Let's talk about define our terms. How do you see
what is authentic?
When you say that somebody's authentic, what are you saying about that person?
I think it's that they're acting in what's the word I'm trying to say, in alignment with their values. Okay. I think that's like especially from a leadership point of view or a career point of view. I think that it crosses everything. I think that's a baseline. But I know when we're talking about in companies, in leadership, there are parameters that, there's such a thing as being like too much yourself, which could act against you. So in the context of career and profession and business and leadership, it's staying true to your values.
I would add to that because I know you're big on emotional intelligence. I teach emotional competency, which then leads to emotional intelligence. My sense of it is that an authentic person is somebody who's emotionally very mature, and that they are emotionally self-aware, they can self-regulate, and they have cognitive and affective empathy, and they know how to use those skills. And when that happens, now they're settled into their skin, and they can modulate themselves appropriately in every context, and they always come across as what you see is what you get. Without a lot of the emotional baggage that a lot of people have.
Yeah, I like that. And I think the values piece probably is like that comes first, right?
Right.
And it's part of the self-awareness, right? Knowing when you're in alignment or out of alignment, and how as you said, how you're regulating and
right, exactly. Well, this show is called Listen with Leaders, so it's obviously about listening. And your interview with me in Authority Magazine was about listening, and
love it.
You had some really interesting insights. Tell us about the importance of listening from your perspective.
Gosh, yeah. Well, I think far too often people think of communication as talking. That's the first problem. So with listening, you know, it is literally the other, it's the yin to the yang, or the yang to the yin, right? Talking without having somebody really listening is pointless. So yeah, so I mean, really is a massive, it's a super important communication skill. And then effective listening is the ability to pay full attention without distraction,
And that
so
is
that you're understanding, right? It's listening to understand.
right. It's hard to do. There's an interesting new brain scanning study that's come out that shows the people that interrupt in conversation and really can't listen. It's because they have low emotional impulse control. And so they get distracted. Somebody says something and it triggers an emotional experience. And now they have this urge or this impulse to deal with the emotion and to heck with the consequences. And so they just blurt out whatever they say. And they can't, it's very difficult for them to listen because they can't manage their emotions very well, which is really interesting.
Yeah, well, I would say a personal example is I have a daughter that only recently, my other daughter, who is only recently at a later age diagnosed with ADHD. She used to interrupt all the time. And it's that impulse control. It's her focus is the problem. So it's
right.
She's very immediate. And that, you know, and the active listening, being an effective listener, as you said, it's difficult for the best of us, right? It takes practice.
I teach a skill that I developed in 2005, where I teach people to ignore the words and pay attention to the emotions, listen to the emotions. And what I found is that when people learn how to do that, they've got something to focus on. And the beauty of it is that when you listen to the emotions, you'll always remember the words because all memory is associated with emotion.
Interesting.
And I can remember conversations that I would have never remembered. But I used to be, as a lawyer, a prolific note taker, but I don't have to take notes anymore. I don't have an eidetic memory, but all I have to do is pay attention to the emotions and I'll remember what happened. It's kind of
fascinating.
Kind of remarkable. Yeah, I think part of the problem is that in leadership, at least in my experience, I'd be curious about what you think. People work their way up to the ranks, they get into leadership positions. Now they've got teams reporting to them, and they have this idea that I'm at the top and I don't have to listen, and all I have to do is tell people what to do, and I know all, and I'm the boss, and I worked hard to get here, by God, and you know, you listen to me. That sort of very patriarchal, hierarchical attitude that causes leaders, especially, not to be particularly good listeners. I mean, what's your experience?
I think that's very accurate. And I would add to that, since we've already talked about self a little bit, that's true too, as you move further up, right? Because you don't get feedback.
Yeah, you're getting
like
more
you do when you're younger. Yeah. But yes, so I do think that there's and good leaders listen. Good leaders surround themselves with people who are better at things than they are, right? And so the whole point is to listen to what they have to say.
Right.
But I'd say that's a big difference between, you know, if you have yes men, the so-called yes men, then, you know,
yeah, sycophants, they don't help you at all, other than to assuage your ego.
Right. Right.
What do you think the primary functions of leadership are?
I think depending where you are and what you call leadership, right?
Okay. Good, fair enough.
But I think for many of the clients that I work with, it's the strategizing, it's the development of the people who are reporting to you, bringing them along. as you evolve, right, or climb the corporate ladder, you become less of a doer and more of a thinker. And I think it's a challenge that a lot of people have making that transition, right? And where they stumble in leadership is still being the doer and having no time for the thinking. And I'm often, talking to clients about the thinking being part of their job, right? The stuff they don't have time for, that's their job,
Right.
As a leader. That's their job as an executive, a senior person. But I think the development piece is really crucial too. I mean, as a leader, you need to be thinking about your people and how their development is going and how to expand their, it's sort of I'm a queen of the mixed metaphor. How all boats rise, the tides, all boats rise. Right? You only excel as a leader. You're only as good as the people who are
on your team. A good leader is going to be a good coach and teacher.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the development, right? The coaching is, I mean, that's a big thing that I love about coaching, is this sort of ripple effect, which is why I have the logo I do, because it's sort of meant to be kind of a ripple. But, even in one-to-one coaching, people pick up on, the effectiveness of the technique. And when we talk about how they develop their people, or, getting into the questioning versus the telling, seeking, what they think instead of, telling them what to do.
Yeah. So when I teach leadership, I talk about focus, direction, and safety. Those are the three psychological services that a leader provides to a group. Safety being emotional and psychological safety through being emotionally intelligent, effective, cognitive empathy, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And focus is keeping the team focused on task, so they avoid work. They don't get enmeshed in what are known as work avoidant behaviors, and then also direction, looking out over the horizon, saying, where are we going? Where are the dangers? where are the opportunities?
Yeah.
Leader's the one person that can do that. It's like in an orangutan group, you don't see teenage orangutans leading the troop. You see the old moms leading the troop, because they know if they can go past those lions, because the lions have been fed, they just ate, so they're not going to bother the troop. We can take the shortcut to get to the watering hole. And they know where the best berry patches are, right? So they provide direction. Leaders provide direction, and part of the process of being a leader is understanding just exactly what you're saying, that you're not a doer. You're a thinker, a strategist, a decision maker, a coach. You're providing safety. You're creating safety for your team, and direction and focus, so that whatever goals you have can get accomplished.
And I'd add clarity.
Yes. That I would put that, I agree with that. And I would put that under the focus part.
Yeah.
If you don't have clarity, how do you get focus? And if you're unfocused,
you
probably lack clarity. And that's
that's a good point.
It's hard. I think these are not skills that are taught anywhere. I mean, you don't go to a formal class in, for example, learning how to get clear on stuff. I think a lot of it is experiential learning. And I suppose that also argues why having a high-level executive coach like yourself can be a real game changer for people.
Yeah, agreed. And I would add, so I do group coaching as well, which is, for people who get confused between team and group. Group is people who are, don't work together as a team, but have similar challenges to one another. And so they can help each other in the process as challenges come up, or as a coach with a group, when you're coaching an individual in the group on something that they raise, everybody in the group usually gets something out of it because they
Me
have
too.
some form of similar challenges, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. Me too.
It amazes me how many shared experiences we all have that we don't talk about for one reason or another. And we are a little isolated. I think that social media has been a real downgrade to our
Yeah.
social interactions over the last 20 years. But yeah, it's amazing to watch people have those enlightenment experiences. Oh, you're having that problem too?
Yeah.
And
And I would add, yes to social media, and I think we're better at some things now than we were when I was in corporate, in terms of, being vulnerable, that it's okay to like say you have a problem.
right,
Um,
that is
one
slowly,
of the things that's kind of,
yeah, it's slowly shifting
yes,
better.
yeah, for sure. And in group coaching, you tend not to be with people in your own organization, which makes it even easier to
Yeah,
kind
you
of
can be.
say, I have a problem.
You're not worried about it getting exploited or being reprimanded or having adverse consequences because you're opening up a vulnerability that you have.
Exactly.
I can see that as being very powerful.
Yeah.
So let me ask you one last question.
Yeah.
Tell us one thing about yourself that we wouldn't know if you didn't reveal it.
Oh. Oh.
I'll give you an example. I'll share one that I like to share.
Okay.
Which, my mother, myself, and my brothers, and my brother's children all went to the same schools and had the same teachers and principals over 3 generations in San
Well,
Marino.
that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy.
You wouldn't know that otherwise.
No, I wouldn't know that. Okay. Well, I mentioned that this is just so random. I mentioned that I used to be in the entertainment, my first job was at HBO. I loved TV and media and all that stuff. And I lived in New York. And one of the things when I was younger, living in New York after college, was my ability to see celebrities everywhere, famous people everywhere. Like it became a joke with them because I'd call them up, not on a cell phone because we didn't have them, but I'd call them up and be like, okay, guess who I saw now? It was like crazy.
That is really great.
Big celebrities. So
that is great. You've got an eye for the celebrity.
So that was, yeah, I had an eye for the celebrities. Now I don't even know who famous people are.
I know. That's great. Great story. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to chat with me. I know my audience really appreciated it too.
Thanks, Doug. This was really fun. It was such a pleasure to get to know you too.
Absolutely.
Okay.